Welcome to The Ripple Within, a podcast by All in One Life Coaching. I'm Michelle, a certified life coach specializing in mindset, emotional wellness, and the law of attraction. I work with people to help create the narrative around their desired outcome.
And I'm Kathy. I'm here to ask the questions, explore the patterns, and share the real life moments that make this all, well, make sense.
This podcast is about the connection between how we feel and the physical reality we experience every day. We'll explore how our thoughts lead to outcomes and how narrative shifts can create big change.
We'll keep it grounded using logic and lived experience, not just theory. And if you've ever wondered why you feel stuck, reactive, or out of sync with yourself, you're not alone.
Our life experience will always match how we feel. This podcast is about exploring our ripple within, how our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and values contribute to the physical life we live. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone. All right, Kathy, what have you got for us today?
We're going to start with a little bit of backstory. So let's talk about you and how you got to where you are.
That seems like such a big topic. I'll cover certainly how I got to this particular environment. I think the majority of my life, I always knew that there was information that I didn't have yet. I think that I just always suspected that somehow we were more involved in this experience than I understood or gave it credit for. And several years ago, I was volunteering and met this lovely lady who introduced me to law of attraction. And I think I kind of was a little bit on the fence about it because it's law of attraction. And when you live a specific life experience that may not have been fun to live, it can be difficult to acknowledge or understand that somehow I may have played a role in it. So I was really on the fence about this belief system. And plus, I had heard so many things about it being like a cult or that type of environment. So I wanted to be able to discover more of a scientific approach to understanding what law of attraction is and understanding a little bit more about human behavior. I go to school a lot and I take a lot of classes on human behavior from adolescent to adult in a variety of areas from a variety of institutions. And that when that lovely lady came to me 8 years ago, because it was right before you and I had met, and gave me a new perspective about the way to look at law of attraction and the way to understand it and be a part of it. And it still took me several months to be able to get to a place where I was like, oh man, I totally get it now. Like, I get that I didn't do anything on purpose, that I wasn't asking for a bad experience, that although I was taking part, I wasn't doing it for a negative outcome. But where I was creating the way I took part. So if it was confrontational or anything like that, I could come to terms with the fact that it was my either an insecurity, a lack of knowledge, some naivety, a need from somebody else to give me something was creating an energy state within me so that when I conducted myself, I was doing it from that state. So when I discovered really about living a truth and living who I wanted to be and how I wanted to present myself, and truly lining up with a well-being perspective. Like, what does it mean to be helpful? What does it mean to be my best? And being able to determine some of that information allowed me to expand into an environment where we work in our day jobs. And I certainly didn't start there as a coach. And I'll remember the very first day that you and I met, and I think you said to me, "Man, you should be a motivational speaker," or something like that, because I was so pumped about being able to, a couple of things, give myself some peace. I mean, the majority of my life, I had held resentment and shame and just a whole bunch of negative emotions that I was truly able to look at the same situation and have a completely different perspective. And as you know, I don't like to use the term forgiveness and that sort of thing, because it seems weird to ask people to forgive things that are unforgivable. But what it did do for me was allowed me peace of mind in knowing that I could now understand why those things may have happened. And just in everyday experience, like, why did I get stuck in traffic? Why did this go sideways at work? Why did this happen? So it answered a lot of whys for me. And and because of that feeling of relief, of peace of mind, of, oh man, like, people don't know that they can do this, and oh man, people don't understand that they could just be a little bit happier and that they have so much power within them. And that journey really started from me being able to verbalize it over the last 8 years. And I'm continuing to grow and learn. And I'm so blessed to have people like you come into my experience and share your experiences with me and allow me that room and that safety to be able to do it. It's one of the reasons why you and I are here in this moment. I just couldn't imagine really doing this with anybody better, because we're so connected. And so when you and I first talked about having a podcast and doing this and being able to be in an environment where, and we've said, if one person can resonate and feel a little bit better, then we've done what we've set out to do. I certainly feel like we have some knowledge that we could share that can be enlightening and that will help people understand and grow and develop and become happier in their own experience, understanding what this, from this perspective, and how we view that. So yeah, it was a long road. It was a lot of moving from province to province and city to city and country to country, and then ending up in this moment exactly where I should be.
I remember when we first met. I used to think that I was such a happy, bubbly, and to to figure out that most of it was fake. And I think in the back of my head, I kind of knew that there was a lot of pretending going on for me.
Yeah.
But there was one story that you told me, if you want to share, something about a dragon that you were being tested, or you wanted to test to see if law of attraction really was what you
Yeah,
thought it
so
was. Yeah.
it that was that just after the lovely lady I'd met. We were volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, and I think I was just doing what I do best. I'm a bit of a chatter, if we haven't noticed. And I was, of course, painting and getting to know the folks that I was painting with, and I just doing what I normally do, just talking and asking questions and being really curious about their experience. And this lovely lady at the end of the day, she was like, "Hey, like, have you ever heard about this? And you sound just like it. And I think you should research it." So then I watched, she actually plugged a couple videos in my phone to watch. And one of those videos was Abraham Hicks, who did an interview with Oprah Winfrey and her husband. And when I first listened to it, I was like, my God, like, that's what's happening to me. Like, I feel like there's all these answers that we have. So, and again, it took a minute to get into that, but Abraham Hicks said, like, just test it. test this law of attraction thing and just ask the universe for something, get out of the way, and let it happen kind of thing. So I was heavily involved with watching Game of Thrones at the time, and I was like, I want dragons, and I was so
I mean,
excited about it.
doesn't. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
knowing that I wasn't going to get a fire breathing dragon out of the sky, right? Like I knew that that probably wasn't going to be the outcome, but I said it and then I was like, okay, I'll get out of the way. And then a few weeks later, my grandchildren were over for a visit, and Travis had purchased some Kinder Surprises from Walmart. Now, here in Canada, the Kinder Surprise, we still get the toy in them. The Americans don't get to have the toy. So the grandkids are here and they're like, we don't want them. And we're like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. So they sat on the counter for a couple of weeks and I hadn't started at our day job yet. I hadn't made it there just yet. A couple weeks go by and Travis says, hey, do you want one of those Kinder Surprises? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And he's like, well, which one do you want? So I pick one and then I open it and realize there's a toy in it and I give it to him to put together and he gives it back to me and it's a baby dragon. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what? And I'm like, no way. And of course, I hadn't told anybody about this. Like, I hadn't mentioned that I'd made this request to the universe. That was my own private little, oh, let's test this out kind of thing. Something completely ridiculous. And then I get my day job where we are now. And in most organizations, you have to work with IT and you have to bring in your computer and you have to do things. And so I'm headed off to the IT department. And I knew before I started that I was coming to the table with a completely new perspective. My goal was I'm going with the flow. I'm here to learn. I'm going to figure it out. And whenever I feel anxious or upset, I'm just going to know there's a bigger picture. And I didn't have all of the homework and I hadn't completed all of that just yet. And I get to our IT department and I look at the ceiling. They're super fun, by the way, but I look at the ceiling and there's this stuff thing hanging. And I was like, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's a dragon. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, we took apart an old chair that we were throwing out and they made a dragon and hung it from the ceiling. And so now I'm like, okay, this is not coincidence at this point. Like there is something truly bigger happening and at play here. So it was almost like the proof in the pudding that I needed to have maybe, or as we as humans often need, we need to see it before we believe it. And what we do now is we're like, well, try believing it first and then you'll see it. And just like within that experience, somehow deep inside I knew that dragons was going to be something. And Edmonton has a lot of casinos, and my girlfriend and I went in and the very first slot machine that I saw was this big dragon. So again, it was like when we ask for stuff now, what you and I talk about, we're always asking from well-being. Like I'm not going to ask for something that's going to hurt myself or another. So I knew that the dragons was just going to be, well, whatever, I'm just throwing something out there. And then every time I turned around, it was there. So then I just started to notice that I could ask for anything. Now, again, I'm not asking for to win lotteries. I'm not asking to win houses. I'm not asking for that stuff. I'm asking for clarity and peace of mind and helpfulness and understanding and compassion. I'm not asking for the physical stuff. I'm asking for an emotional state. So yeah, it was just such a wonderful thing to be able to witness with my own eyes that I could ask for something and have it land in my lap.
The research that you did
Mhm.
after the dragon sighting. Let's call it a dragon sighting. Where did
Yeah.
that take you?
Well, so I just started to really, really listen to Abraham Hicks a lot. Like I probably listened to her for a solid 6, 7, 8 months because again, I was in and out, right? Like when you have, I mean, I didn't have the greatest of life experiences, right? There was some early trauma in my experience. So I had to wrap my head around, okay, wait a minute, how did this happen? Like, how did I ask or how did I ask for that? And that's really where it came down to me truly understanding that I didn't ask for it. Nobody does. Nobody's asking to be harmed or to be hurt. That's not what's happening. But being in vulnerable situations opens up that potential. And it's why we talk about the scale so much, because if you're raised in the environment down here, then you're less likely to be loud and complain. When we're insecure, shy, scared, worried, fearful, we're not out using our voices. It makes it easier in those cases for the bad person or the person who's going to do harm to be able to do that. And I think once I really understood that, again, it just provided such freedom. So once I understood it, just listening to people like Eckhart Tolle and Sadhguru and Jay Shetty, Wayne Dyer, like there was just so many people that already existed who were telling this story for years. I mean, the book The Secret came out. Abraham, certainly, I have her books up here. I mean, she came out a really long time ago. I think she's been around for like 50 years. But even more importantly, if we look back in history, Aristotle spoke about stuff like this. So this was just a way for me to discover that it wasn't some mystical thing happening, that there was, that we could put a physical connection to our experience with an experience that has no physical. So our thoughts, our emotions, what we feel, those inspirations that enter us, I think that was the true clarity of putting together the pieces, so to speak, to be able to really live a life in comfort more often than not.
That's a brilliant segue into our part 1A for today, which is beating yourself up and
Mm,
letting go.
yeah,
We hear it all the time, right? Nobody's harder on us than us. And
yeah,
I I can't speak for the whole universe, but I'm pretty sure it happens to a good majority of us. How do we let it go? How do we learn to let it go? How do we deal with the emotion that we're having
yeah.
to be able to let go?
Well, that is going to be the tricky part in this experience because we can't let something go and essentially just feel really good. The goal again is to move towards something that is preferred. And when we can have clarity about why something might have happened and be able to take away, not take away our responsibility in it, but take away our on purpose responsibility in it. Because again, when we live through things that are horrible, we didn't ask for that. We're not, no one on this planet is out there going, pick me to do the most terrible thing too. Like that is just not what's happening. But as we've said before, if we're in an environment where there's instability and maybe that there isn't a lot of support, or a child doesn't have a voice and is, shoved into the corner. And then on top of that, we don't really teach them the basics of emotional state, that those are learning tools for us, and that we have an ability to monitor our emotional state. We can't really monitor our thoughts because there's too many, but when we monitor our emotional state and truly discover our own power to what's happening around us. Because again, I mean, if I were to old school me, for example, would look back in time and feel like just unbelievable shame. Like just this, how could you be that? And how could you do that? And how could you let that happen? And it just all of this beating myself up. Whereas now I can look at those experiences and go, oh my gosh, like that made total sense that you ended up in that environment, because prior to that environment, this was lost. This was confused. This was in anxiety. This was in fear of being abandoned or left alone or hurt in some way. And the feeling of loss was so powerful because it felt like the end. Like it just always felt like the end. And I couldn't wrap my head around this pain that I would feel. And I just couldn't fathom why it was happening. Why is this happening to me? I would ask that question so much of the universe to answer. And what I didn't know was the reason why it was happening is because in here, I kept saying to myself, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. Or what will people think? Or I'm not allowed to speak about it. Or I just simply prevented myself from being strong, from having courage, from having a voice. And again, nobody was out there with a gun to my head saying that I had to do that. That was years and years and years of practiced behavior. So once I figured out that I could tell where I was emotionally, so I can tell pretty quickly, as you know, when I'm in the rabbit hole. I know it pretty quickly. And then I get to make this conscious decision about, okay, am I going to stay in it for a minute or two? And I mean, you're my go-to, right? Like, that sometimes I'm like, nah, I'm going to be in it. I'm just going to, in this
Yep.
moment, I am not going to find my way up the chain, because right now I just want to be upset. I do. And that again, though, is this talking more than that well being, as we talk about, calling us to feel better, because that's the ultimate goal. And I don't prevent myself from having emotions that don't feel good. I just, when I have them, I ask some bigger questions. Like, is there something I can do about it? Is it any of my business? Is this a situation where I can be helpful? What can I do to change it? Is my perspective of it accurate, or am I just being a little pissy right now? And that can happen. Like
Yep.
it just really can happen. And when we're in that state, it's easier to find the problem.
It. I know we've talked before about grocery shopping. I don't go grocery shopping all the time, just FYI. But I think because of where grocery shopping started for me, in that place of dislike and money and blah blah, I can't find
Yeah.
them, all that sort of stuff, right? Even though I do work before I go grocery shopping, sometimes, last time I went, I still find myself falling below the line every once in a while, which I did
Hmm.
do last weekend while I was in the grocery store. It started out good, and then and and then I said something to myself, did something to myself that turned it. And then I was like, well, shit, now I can't find nothing, right? Like, now you're going to walk all the dang aisles again. It's just what's happening. And so to be able to, I did catch that. I did straighten myself out. And by the time I left the grocery store, I was back to where I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. Do it again.
Yeah.
It'll be all right,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it happened so quick that the first few things that I couldn't find that I needed to find at the end of the list. Do you know what I mean? Like when
Yeah.
you're almost done and you just need those couple more things, and then it it turned, and then it turned back. It took me a minute. It didn't happen like instantly either. It took
Yeah.
me, a good little talk in my head and just kind of walking around and breathing and just, but it did happen. Like it did get me back to where I needed to be. Found the last three things on the list and went, see, that wasn't so hard. And then off we went, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
Well, and that's you though, again, being able to recognize that you've dipped into the rabbit hole and then making that conscious decision again to I'm either going to stay here because we certainly have that ability, we can stay there, or we can talk ourselves into a different state of being because this experience that we're living, the physical doesn't happen first. It just doesn't. What's happening first is the intention, the idea, the thought, then the words, or if we don't use words, then it's the physical action we take. And what'll happen, it's interesting because the grocery store is probably one where viewers are going to be like, oh my God, give me a different example at some point. But I actually have a grocery store one too, where I had an appointment that I had to get to. The grocery store was in the same parking lot. And I was like, oh, I'll go there first and then I'll go to my appointment. Everything will be great. I only need an hour. No problem. I'm only going to need an hour. What I don't realize is it is in mid-afternoon. Normally, when I go grocery shopping, I do it pretty early in the morning because there's nobody there. Then I have this quiet grocery store and I can do my thing, no problem. In and out, half an hour, easy breezy. But it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I pull into the parking lot, and there are cars everywhere. So immediately I'm like, ugh, this is just going to be a disaster. And then again, like you, I'm like, oh no, wait a minute, it'll be fine. You have an hour, no problem. Get inside the store, and it is packed at what it's 15% off coupon day. It's 3 in the afternoon. It is people's carts are hitting each other. The lines are long. And I'm just like, I am never getting out of the store. And so I immediately forget what's even on my list because now all I can think about is, do I do this now or do I scrap it all and then go to my appointment, do it after so I'm not rushing? Do I pick up the things that are super necessary and get out of here? Like, what do I do? What do I do? So I'm like wobbling back and forth through the whole experience. I miss a bunch of things on my list. I don't have them. I'm constantly checking the clock. Like, I've got 10 minutes. Okay, it won't take long to get through checkout. And then I'm like, and for those who don't know, Canada, we have self checkout for most of our stores. So, and we also have people. So I'm like, do I do self checkout? Because something is going to go sideways. They're going to have to call somebody over. No, forget it. I'll go through a line. I get to my line and I'm like, okay, one person in front of me, no big deal. But then I realize that they're having trouble with the cash machine. So they have to call somebody. I'm like, oh, of course this is happening. So then I'm like, oh, I'm going to move lines. I know that line over there. And there was this lovely elderly lady there who really just wanted to chit chat, and she had a bunch of questions for the cashier. So now I'm like tapping my foot like, oh my God, can we just get out of this line so I can get to my appointment? And then of course the cashier, she's super friendly, and I'm like, I appreciate the friendliness, but can we, like, I just really have to go. I have to go. And then she's laughing, and we're laughing because she's like, oh, you've got 2 minutes. And then she's like stuffing things into my bags. And so it was like this kind of almost like this debacle of me doing this in like big ways. Like, should I leave? Should I go? Should I stay? Should I da, 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 da? No, 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 this line, that line. Like it was, and I finally get out to my car. I'm killing myself laughing because now I have like 3 minutes. Luckily, it's like in the same parking lot. I have 3 minutes to race into the next thing. And by the time I get in there, I'm like sweating, all worried about missing my appointment. I even sent them a text, I think, because I need, if I say I'm going to do something, I need to follow through or it bothers me. And I walk in and I'm sweating a little bit and they were like, it would have been okay if you were a little bit late. Like, no, like, no big deal. So I worked myself up into this almost this state of I'm never grocery shopping again at 3 in the afternoon. But what it did was so in reflection of that, it was, well, what was my learning experience from it? Like, what was I meant to learn from that experience? That I'm not going to shop at 3 in the afternoon on 15% off coupon day. I'm not doing that. And also, in the event that I might have to do that again, I won't do it an hour within another appointment. I might try to either do it after or do it earlier if I can. It created a way for me to learn some valuable things. But man, for that 50 minutes, I did not have a great time.
Hey, guess what? You're human. I
Yeah, yeah. Well, and those are those signals that we can relate this to. Like if folks just simply pay attention to where they are, first we notice by how we feel, and then just watch what's happening around you. If you're here and you're in a work environment, I promise you're not having fun at work. If you're here, up here in a work environment, you get to find dragons hanging from the ceiling.
yeah, our emotional state, if we can teach ourselves to recognize our emotional state first,
Yeah.
world a better place.
Well, and that actually brings me a question for you because earlier you mentioned that as you were discovering this with me, quite frankly, that you were able to go back in that time and realize that maybe how happy-go-lucky you were was fake. I want to touch on that a little bit because one, I'd like your response on how does it feel for you to say that it was fake? Like, what does that feel like for you?
I think I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with it because it was clarity and realization for me to not supposed to dwell in the past and all that sort of stuff, but it did absolutely teach me what now I believe my true happiness is and what that feels like as opposed to what that felt like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, do you mind touching a little bit on those differences? Because I actually, and we'll get to changing the narrative a little bit from that fake, but let's talk about the difference in that from that feeling of I'm wearing a mask versus really being in my feels kind of thing. Like, what was that like for you?
It was exhausting. So to to need to be, and yeah, word need, to need to present constant happiness
Mm,
was exhausting.
mm,
And
yeah,
I know now it's true happiness. It's easy. It's I
yeah,
don't I don't I don't necessarily think about it as much as I did back then. I think
yeah,
about it now when I burn myself on the oven and I stub my toe when
yeah,
I'm making supper and dropping cut up celery and cheese and stuff on the floor. It, then I'm like, oh, check yourself. Something's going on. When I get an email at work that makes me go, ugh, I check yourself. I don't always catch it. I don't catch it 100% of the time. I also realize when I'm in the bucket, sometimes I'll stay there. Sometimes I'm like, nope, nope, this is not happening right now. We're going to change it, right? But
Yeah.
it's such a difference to look back. Yeah. And there were times, don't get me wrong, there were times I absolutely knew I was faking it. Like I absolutely knew I was faking it. And what
Sorry, I
a
got a
difference
tickle.
that is now. A huge difference to
Well,
now,
so
for sure.
I want to talk a little bit about the faking it part as soon as I get the tickle out of my throat. I'm just gonna have a drink of my water. I would like us to categorize it a little bit differently than you faking it. You had a belief system that it was something that you had to do. So you weren't faking it. You might have been wearing a bit of a mask, but you were behaving from a place that you felt like you needed to behave from. And we always want to make sure that when we're having conversations with people, and certainly for listeners, that again, you weren't doing that on purpose. You weren't coming to the table knowingly going, I am going to fake the heck out of this today and I'm going to knock it out of the park. And like you just weren't doing that. There was a part of you, though, whether it was feeling a little bit insecure, maybe not feeling good enough, maybe feeling like you had to live up to an expectation in the eyes of somebody else, where you now were wearing this mask without being able to acknowledge some of the hurt and the pain and the life experience that you've had, and whether it was through work or personal life or whatever the case, because certainly there was some of that, as there is for most humans. So uh, versus saying you faked it, versus saying you were faking it, because faking it can be a little bit tricky, right? Like faking it is, if we look up the definition of it, it doesn't have a great response. So it's one of those things where, and it's a little bit nitpicky because I know that you're beyond that. But for other folks who may not resonate with, I've been faking it this whole time, versus being able to say, I was conducting myself from exactly where I was. And where I was in those times was confusion, lack of clarity, misunderstanding, loneliness. It can be anything in here will cause us then to say that I was faking it. But really, more accurately, you were responding from the emotional state that you were in. And that is never going to be wrong. Like it's just going to line up.
For our listeners, do you have advice and tips on the first, let's say, 3 steps on letting letting go and forgiving yourself?
First, we have to acknowledge that we are not picking the shit show on purpose. Nobody wakes up in the morning in their 2-year-old body going, I am going to live a life of absolute misery. I'm going to be a disaster for the people I come in contact with. I am going to get hurt every chance I get. That is not happening. I will never be convinced that a child is asking to be hurt, ever. So
Absolutely.
I believe that that extends into adulthood, that there are no teenagers running around out there going, today is going to be a great day to just be absolutely miserable. And same for adults. We are not running around out there asking for the problem or wanting to get into trouble. Like, that's just not really what we're doing. For some folks, it might be because, again, if we live down here long enough, we'll come to a belief system that that's the only way we get to go. So those patterns can be hard to come out of. But once we realize that we're not doing it on purpose, we're not asking for bad things to happen, that when we can recognize a little bit sooner our emotional state, you mentioned it earlier, like you really notice when you burn yourself or you stub your toe. We would like us to catch it even before then. Like, where am I at on this emotional scale? Now, certainly, as we've talked about, when it becomes a physical experience, okay, it's loud. We can know that this has been here for a minute and because we've had a physical experience. So, for our listeners, pay attention to how you feel. It matters a lot. The best ideas come out of us when we're on the upper end of the echelon. And for those folks who are living down here, you benefit us too. You do. Might not be particularly fun to deal with or work with, and you might be spending time going through multiple jobs and a lot of friends and a lot of partners and might not be enjoying your life experience. But the reality is every discomfort I feel means I'm learning something. It means I'm growing. It means there's solutions to be found. So for the ones that are living down here, we would love for you to feel better. Really, really would. But you're also still benefiting the rest of us too, whether we know it or not. What about you, Kat? What have you got for us?
I think I forget sometimes too to check my emotional state, and I am um, working to catch it even so sooner than the physical. It, obviously, when I burn myself or there's stuff falling on the floor, I'm not catching it quite soon enough. But there's so many thoughts, right? Like our thoughts happen so fast, and they can turn on a dime, and you're like, I gotta do this, and I need to do that, and I need blah 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 blah, and just need to find some calm,
Yeah,
and then the thoughts are easier to move up the scale. Thoughts are definitely easier, sure.
yeah.
Closing thoughts, my dear?
Pay attention to the words we're using. When we hear ourselves say something like, I'm not good enough, we can know instantly that that's not true. So when we feel the negative emotional state, number one, be super proud of yourself for feeling it, because we oftentimes in this experience, we skip right over it and we miss it, and then it'll get louder. But be proud of yourself for noticing pretty early when it does get really loud, right? I mean, we can go back a little bit where we would spend days, hours, weeks sometimes in the loudness of it. And you've been able to come out of that very, very quickly, which is why you can say now that you're genuinely happy. There is no faking it. You're literally doing the work to come out of it. So, yeah, I mean, love yourself, love people around you with everything that you have in you. And I promise this life experience will change.
If any of our listeners have any questions or topics you'd like us to discuss, please leave your comments below. And remember, like and subscribe. Until
Thanks,
next
everyone.
time.
Thank you, Kathy.